Hello and welcome to the Intentional Clinician. I'm your host, Paul Krause, licensed professional counselor. Today's episode is part 2 of my conversation with Mike Speakman. We will be discussing the very common emotion of anger. We will be discussing how it affects mental health, family, relationships, work, and so much more, and we will even discuss what to do about your anger, if you're angry, and how it's connected to our mental health in a vital way. I hope you enjoy it. Before I get into that, I just wanted to let everybody know I am Paul Krause. I am a counselor in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and you can find out more about my private practice at healthforlifegr.com. We have several excellent clinicians working in our office right now, and 3 women and 2 men, and they'd be excited to work with you. And we actually also have a licensed naturopathic doctor as well, who will help with people getting to the root cause of why they feel the way they do and helping them solve it. You can also find out more at paulkrausecounseling.com. All right, thanks for listening. Here's the episode.
Anger, the way that I got into the field of anger management was when I was working for Salvation Army as a counselor there. They asked me to develop an anger management program. This is the adult rehab center in Phoenix. And I said, okay. So I did some research. I put some things together. And I developed a workbook that was 6 lessons. And then over a period of about 8 years, I just fine-tuned it and made it more and more friendly, more and more practical. It wound up to be an 8-lesson workbook, and I did that from the feedback from the clients that I was teaching. And what I did was on purpose, consciously, make it practical and useful and simple, and also non-threatening. So those were the driving forces behind that. And so I wound up calling it SMARTS training: self-motivated anger release tools and strategies. Big long acronym there.
Yes.
But the reason I called it that was because once the students, the clients, the students practiced the tools that they used to deal with their frustration, to deal with confronting someone that they were having a conflict with, to deal with resentment that they had. These are the different areas of anger. When they used the tool and it worked better than what they were using, then they were naturally motivated to continue to use it.
Right.
And I think that's what I thought made it important and different than some of the other programs that are out there. But what happened was then, at a certain point, I left Salvation Army and went to work for Calvary Addiction Recovery Center. That was in 2000, the year 2000. And I had the idea to take from the curriculum that I had developed in SMARTS training, take part of it out of it that would fit for the general public, because that program, SMARTS training, is really comprehensive for people with anger problems, which a lot of people in addiction have. There's a big tie-in to anger in addiction and recovery. So that's something that addicts and alcoholics have to deal with at some point.
Right.
The big book, the AA Big Book, has a very simple quotation in saying that resentment is the number 1 offender, is a direct quote from the AA Big Book. And resentment is nothing more than stored anger.
Right.
The other psychologist that I like a lot, Dr. Terry Kellogg, in the recovery field, has a simple saying about anger and addiction, and it's 3 words: anger empowers addiction. And so if anger empowers addiction, then we need to deal with it.
Right.
So the idea then was to develop a workbook for the general public who may not have severe anger problems, but maybe a little problem with anger, or maybe there's someone that they live with who's got an anger problem. So I called it anger education to separate it from anger management. And I really realized at a certain point that everyone should learn about this important subject because it's so basic. Number 1, by studies, anger is the most common of all the human emotions. Number 2, if people are given a choice of negative emotions, which one they would rather have above other ones, they always choose anger, as opposed to sadness or fear. And it is the one that people know the least about, or have the least control of. So we have an emotion in our society that is the most common, the most preferred,
Right.
and the least able to control. So
Yes.
if I put all those different studies together there, so the workbook then that I came out with 10 years ago is or it's longer than 10 years ago now. It was more like 16 years ago. I called it the healthy expressions of anger.
Yes.
And it's based on the concept, just like SMART training is, that anger itself is not bad, although that's how I was raised. That anger was bad and I should not have it, and I think a lot of people, that's the message we get in our culture.
Right.
In fact, it was called one of the 7 deadly sins is wrath, which is a synonym for anger.
Right. So that's cultural.
It's cultural. It's based in our culture. So why would someone learn about something as bad as that, as evil and sinful as that? So the workbook is designed to help people reframe their opinion. It's not anger itself that's bad any more than gasoline is bad.
Sure.
But gasoline can be used to run an engine, run a motor, and build things. But it could also be used to set a church on fire.
Right.
So it's how you use that energy is the term there. So anyway, that workbook, I have used it over the years in coaching individuals through that workbook. But it's also a self-study workbook, so a person could just buy it and read it. But it also has two of each exercise in it, so a person could do it with a study partner, a spouse, a relative, a friend. So it was designed to be multifunctional, and that's going to be available soon on my website. But
I was about to say, due to popular demand, people are demanding that you re-release it on your website. We're hoping that I think is it speakmancoaching.com? Is that how people get a hold of you? Speakmancoaching.com. You will eventually be able to buy that book, and if you aren't, you can of course email Mike and say, please send me the book, and he will, because I know you can get your other book there, which we talked about in part 1 on your website. So I love that book. I've looked through it. I've done some of the exercises. It's very practical, very down to earth. I think anyone who has a 6th grade or higher reading level could learn from it. Obviously, if you've depending on your maturity level, you get different things out of it. But I thought it was quite useful, and that you could use it with a study partner, a counselor, or a group, or just by yourself. And what is that called? It's called the Healthy Expressions of Anger. That's what it's called. And I know you've talked a lot to me about anger is energy that we just need to know how to use. Mm-hmm. And also difficult to get people to come to anger programming, right? We've talked about that.
That's the biggest issue right there. We all know someone who's got an anger problem.
Sure.
But it's almost, I've said this, it's almost as hard to get someone to work on their anger, maybe even harder than to work on an addiction.
Sure.
And I believe part of that is consciously and unconsciously we use anger as a coping mechanism.
Yes.
So addicts and alcoholics use alcohol and drugs as a coping mechanism. Okay.
Sure.
So they're using it to cope with what? With problems, with conflicts, with issues of life, with stress. And so if you then are going to have a program that takes away alcohol and drugs, takes away anger, or it seems to take away anger, which it
That's
isn't.
our knowledge. That's our black and white thinking.
That's our black
it's
and white
going to take it away from me.
Seems like it's going to take it away. Then you're taken away, although I may not logically connect the dots here, I have this feeling inside I'm going to lose something and give up something. And so therefore it usually takes something pushing me to motivate me to be willing to risk that loss. Again, my story, having to lose my wife before I was even willing to get some help. And again, that concept of a bottom. So anger's a tough sell. Anger's a tough sell.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm assuming this is just another assumption. So I'll disclaimer that.
Okay.
But I wonder if you get calls for people to have someone else work on their anger rather than people calling you directly and saying, I need to work on my anger.
Yes, I'll get that. That's more common.
Okay.
And then I'll tell them a little bit about what I do. And again, I don't do much work on anger. It just comes to me, a person will be referred to me from time to time, maybe one person every month or so, as opposed to my private practice with parents of addicts and alcoholics. But I still keep coming back to it because I think there's a need for it. But my majority of my time is devoted to the parent family education, the parent education part.
Right.
But yeah, I did have one lady one time. It was kind of funny. She called me and said, "I have an anger problem." I go, "Wow, you're very direct and very honest. I want to acknowledge that right away." And she said, "Well, I got to deal with this." So she came to me, and we did which is typically what I do, is 6 1-hour sessions a week apart so they can practice their new tools.
Sure.
She did great. And at one point I asked her, how did you come to this conclusion that you had an anger problem? Because most people
Right.
don't know. I mean, they're not necessarily in denial. They're just not aware that they have an anger problem, or they minimize. I'm not yelling and screaming. I'm just raising my voice for emphasis, for instance, that type
Sure.
of thing. So
I'm just making a point.
yeah, exactly. And because if it's not violence, see, that's how our culture sees it.
Right.
If it's not violence, then it's not anger. That's how our culture tends to see it.
Right.
Sometimes, different times. Anyway, I said, what? She said, my friends sat me down and said, "You have a problem with that." They did like a little intervention on her.
Wow.
And God bless her, she listened.
Yeah.
And she asked around, and people eventually, sent them to me. As far as referrals, there's not a lot of counselors who do anger work because anger is a scary thing.
Yes.
It's associated with violence, associated with sin,
Right.
And it's just a scary kind of a concept.
Right, and it is a tough sell. And I remember, one of the ways I thought you did a really good job was you did a conflict resolution workshop,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
where you actually used some of your anger book, I believe,
Exactly, yeah.
to teach the conflict resolution, and that was quite popular because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have conflict with family members, friends, bosses, whatever. Go ahead.
I hid the word anger
Yes.
in the bullet points of what we're going to look at.
Yes.
Because if I had said dealing with anger and conflict resolution, I think that would turn off a lot of people. It's just one of those words. Being one of the 7 deadly sins,
Yes.
remember, we all maybe have read about that. Well, another one is gluttony. Can you imagine if I had a workbook that said gluttony management? How many people are going to buy that?
Right. Probably not many.
I'm just identifying myself as a glutton, a sinner.
Right, and we don't want to be labeled.
No, exactly.
And we don't want to be falling short of our cultural expectations.
Anger is a horrible label to put on somebody, and so, but it is the key to empowerment.
Yeah. Okay. So we're flipping anger.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Tell me about that.
It is
Tell
the
me about
key to empowerment because, and there's different sayings that I have developed over the years, or I've either stole them from someone else, or I've learned them through observation and doing so many groups over the years. I've learned from people I work with that one of them is that anger is energy, and it will come up in you as a reaction. Anger is never an action. You can't just walk down the street and go, "Man, I'm really mad." Something had to happen. You
Sure.
saw something, you heard something, you remembered something. In other words, anger is a reaction to some event or to some situation or to some thought. So knowing that, if I just keep reacting out of anger, I'm just reacting all the time. It's like my parents that work with their addicted adult sons and daughters. They just keep reacting to the problems, putting out fires. And then they go to PAL and they learn how I can start taking some action. That's empowering. So there's a similarity here. So the anger will come up in me to let me know I'm being treated unfairly. So there's the simple definition of anger: the emotional, energized response to perceived injustice. It's a justice issue. So I'm being treated unfair. So you yell and scream at me? That's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. Now, suppose I realize what I did was so horrible and I feel guilty, and you're yelling and screaming at me. Well, you should from what I did.
Sure.
Then I may be scared, I may be sad, I may be hurt, I may be embarrassed. But I'm not angry. So anger is a justice issue. So me knowing that, I can use that because sometimes people will be really angry and not know why.
Yes.
And so it's kind of frustrating to not even, why am I so angry over this? Here's a clue. Something happened to you or someone you care about. We can put ourselves in other people's place. That was unfair. Oh, okay, now I can sort it and find out what it is.
Yes.
So there's some real basic things that we're teaching that if you don't show me how to learn my anger use it in a positive way, it will wind up coming out in a negative way. So that's one of the sayings.
So, and I want to comment on that a little bit. We call that if we really want to get into the textbook psychology, we call that sublimation, which is defined. It's kind of a more mature coping mechanism where quote unquote socially unacceptable impulses or idealizations are quote unquote unconsciously transformed into socially acceptable actions or behavior, possibly resulting in a long-term conversion from your initial impulse to smash the window or whatever. That's a loose quote, but I remember sublimation being very important to me. And when I used to be writing songs when I was 18 or 19, I actually called my first little demo tape sublimation, because I think I was angry at things. I wasn't quite sure what,
exactly,
but I remembered thinking about my options with anger and having fantasies of acting out on the anger. And then I eventually wrote songs about why I was angry. And when I wrote the songs, I had a huge relief of not being angry anymore, and getting that anger out in the songs. And I think a lot of music is so powerful. There's so many I mean, who knows the genre? I was just playing piano and singing, so I wasn't really into the metal, but black metal, heavy metal, punk rock, hip hop, rap, all these different genres sometimes have a bend where they have the anger songs. I don't hear too many country songs that are angry, but rock songs, you can hear rock songs that are angry. Not too many pop songs are angry unless they're angry about a breakup. But the anger that is channeled, I think a lot of people can identify with, and that music is so popular, and people will wear their band shirt. They will get the tattoo of the band, and they will go there and have a spiritual, transcendent experience when they go see that band play or that hip-hop artist, because they're getting that anger out. And they're going to their job. Maybe they hate their job. I don't know. But they are feeling that cathartic experience by being able to listen to that music. And that's sublimation, is where you're turning anger into something that empowers you for change.
Absolutely. We call that energy management. And it really is important. And a lot of people may not understand that. But we're back to adolescence again here. Adolescence, not knowing who you are and having no control of your life and expecting to be an adult, what could be more unfair?
Yes.
So it's a natural period of unfairness, and nothing that someone says about it can change that reality. So they're supposed to be angry. So the concept of angry teenager should be like, scary gorilla. I mean, it's it's like the two go together.
Sure. Well, so I think that brings me to another point about dealing with adolescence, whether the person is an actual adolescent or an adolescent trapped in an adult's body through delayed emotional development, is validation. We've got to validate people that it is okay to be angry. It is completely normal to be angry, and you certainly possibly, I don't like the word should, but for instance, if you were beaten or something happened to you, you might have to be angry for a while, because of it's a natural reaction to what happened, and therefore then we get to the crossroads. So if we have a reaction, I'm just going to punch a window. I'm just going to punch my boss. I'm just going to cuss somebody out. I'm just going to go on the internet and comment on people's YouTube videos and say a bunch of nasty things because I'm angry all the time. So if I can move into that space where someone validates me and I have that slowdown, then I'm going to have a response to anger instead of a reaction. And the response is a longer gap. And that response can be, something positive for me. So comment on that.
Well, you bring up a couple different points here. One of them is, one of the sayings too in the anger education is, you will either communicate your anger out or you will act it out. There's nothing in between.
Yes.
So once again, being that angry teenager, feeling no power at all, and I'm in a powerless position, expected to have power. So therefore, when I'm angry, it's because of a power situation that I have no power. So therefore, for me to get even with that and to have some way of dealing with that, I need to do something powerful, like hurting somebody, or hurting myself, or some form of revenge against somebody. But if I write it out, against, I have. Someone said it's like energy. It's this energy of anger. Once it's created, it must be spent. See, so
real quick, matter can neither be created or destroyed.
Yeah.
So if the anger matter, the energy inside your body is aroused, it must be spent.
Absolutely.
So what does that mean?
That means that the analogy is like a ATM method. ATM. Once you withdraw the money, now it has to be spent. The question is where you're going to spend it. So without education, there's a really good likelihood that I'll spend it in negative ways only because that's what I see in our culture and our society.
Sure.
So the two basic ways that I normally will do that is number one, I will hold it in and then have an explosion later.
Sure.
Or hold it in and have some physical reactions as a certain very common stomach problems, headaches, shoulder and neck issues are associated with holding in anger.
Yeah.
So I'll either hold it all in, which will hurt me, or I'll take it out on someone else, which will hurt them. So that's what we see in our culture. That's what we see in our society. Now, if I am able to hurt you more than you hurt me, then I call that a winner.
Yeah.
And if you are not able to hurt someone back, then you're the loser. And if you look at our movies, how many of our movies have a theme of getting even?
Revenge.
Revenge.
Revenge is huge in our movies.
Revenge is a natural, normal drive for us as human beings, because when we're hurt, if we have no other way, and again, without rite of passage, we don't learn these ways.
Sure.
If we have no other way to get rid, there's like me laying on that floor. You could say I was hurt.
You wanted revenge.
I was revenge against myself, though.
Revenge against yourself, not others.
Yeah. See, but I had fantasies of doing something against her and her boyfriend.
Sure.
So anyway, those are normal. So what happens is I have this energy. I'm hurt. If I can get back at who hurt me, let's say my energy level, my hurt level is a 10, then I can't live at a 10.
No.
I can't. I mean, I can get by for a while. I need some relief. If I can hurt you, if you're the one who hurt me, I can hurt you back. It goes down to about a 7.
Sure.
I can deal with that. But through time, it'll get back up there.
Oh, yeah.
So revenge is not the long-term solution. It's a short-term solution. So what happens is, if you don't show me other ways to deal with this, then I have to hurt myself, or it'll come out physically some way.
Self-medicate.
Alcohol or drugs. Or I'll do it some physical way. Maybe I'll be a jogger and I'll go beat a pillow or some.
Boxing.
I'm trying to get that energy out.
Yes.
Now, if I'm in a situation where that unfairness happens every day, now I'm heading towards violence.
Oh, yes.
See, now I'm heading towards violence. Where that unfairness happens and there's no recourse at all.
Yes.
You see the powerlessness? So violence does not come from anger directly any more than car accidents come from gasoline directly.
Right.
But by the same token, you could argue no gasoline, no car accidents.
Sure.
No anger, no violence. Yes, that argument is valid, because the energy to carry out the violence. Let's say I don't have the anger. Let's say that I turn that anger energy in on myself and I'm depressed.
Yes. There we go.
I still want to get even with someone at school.
Sure.
But I don't have the energy to get out of bed in the morning.
Right.
Energy to follow through. Now you give me antidepressants. It releases some of that energy.
Right.
Now I can go to that store and buy that gun.
Right.
That's one of the theories. It's not the antidepressants directly
Sure.
that leads to violence, but they release some of that energy to someone else useful for me.
Well, it gets you out of your depression without dealing. So here's the thing. We'll talk about this. Just a little disclaimer. We are not anti-medication.
No, not at all.
But one thing about medication is this. The medication is covering the symptoms.
Yeah.
It is giving you relief. In the terms of an SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or an SNRI, which this is not an episode of medication. What can happen is, of course, if you're depressed, it is going to take care of your symptoms of depression, and you can then get up and feel better.
Yeah.
And if you have something unresolved in your soul, and in your narrative, in your story, in your personhood, that antidepressant could be very detrimental, because you may never deal with it, and then it's going to come out somewhere. Yeah. It is going to come out somewhere if you have not dealt with it, because it's a temporary symptom relief. A lot of times people have to go up 10, 20 milligrams higher antidepressants. Try this antidepressant. Try this. Try Abilify with your antidepressant, because it stops working after a while. Our body adjusts sometimes. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, but if you need medication, talk to your psychiatrist, because a lot of times short-term medication use really does help people get out of bed in a good way. And if they are getting the counseling or the help or the community support, then they can deal with that anger inside, or that whatever the cause of the depression is.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
the depression and the anger or the anxiety and the fear, whatever, is an invitation to work on something in our story. Something is not right. Exactly. I've been wrong.
It's a signal.
It's a signal.
Yeah.
And we need to get to that root issue, which is why counseling and group counseling is so fundamental, because if you can work out what that root issue is, the root of the tree, the root of the plant, then you can help pull out that wound or heal that wound, versus I'm going to placate it with this med. As again, medications can be a short-term solution, but be careful if you're taking medications and not also getting some type of other help. Because symptom relief is great, but it doesn't resolve symptoms and difficulties with your story of your life. A lot of people see themselves in a story. It doesn't resolve the symptoms of your soul. It doesn't resolve the issues in your relationships and your dynamics with your relationships and your place and your vocation and how you view the world. But it will make you feel better. Okay. So that's an important point right there about anger and not dealing with it. It is going to come out somewhere. There's always some type of reaction, even if it's delayed.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is we have a culture that doesn't teach us about anger, and it shows us, that teaches us to suppress it, and then shows us ways to express it in unhealthy ways, and that's kind of what we're learning. And the whole idea of the healthy expressions of anger is to learn that there's two major healthy ways to express anger, and that we learn what those two ways are and practice using the tools of that. So to sum that all up, in other words, anger is energy.
Yes.
It's a signal to let me know that I'm being treated unfairly, and it provides the energy to me to right the wrong, to stop the unfair treatment.
Yes.
But without tools, I'm likely to not do that correctly or not even try it at all.
Now, I know this is just a podcast, and this is not a substitute for medical treatment. And if people have anger issues, they can give you a call and go to speakmancoaching.com. And if it's coaching, I bet, can they actually talk to you from out of state?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if it's coaching, you can talk to Mike from out of state. But Mike, would you share? I don't want you to share the whole thing, but maybe a summary of a couple tools that you really like, and then I'm going to get to the anger quote reaction round, which is my.
One of the tools I like is a letter for dealing with releasing resentments, because for some people resentment is a really big issue and they're aware of it.
Sure.
But there's some people where resentment is not a big issue, and so that's just not a big issue. But for other people, it's a big issue and they're not aware of it. So you have those three different categories. So that's one of the tools.
So writing a letter.
Writing a letter, and there's a format for it and a way of dealing with it after you write it. But that's a good example of, like you were talking about, if you don't communicate it out, you will act it out.
Yes.
So that's a good example.
And that's in your book.
That's in the book.
The tool.
Yeah.
What's another tool you like?
Another tool I like is just a simple little written down reminder of a kind of like a mindfulness exercise where I write down on a piece of paper what I call the quiet place, which is a memory of some time when I was doing something that was enjoyable, but there was absolutely no striving of any kind.
Yes.
And so I write down what I was doing. For instance, walking at a lake with my dog Tuffy. I just have that memory. I just pull that up, and then it's who you're with. Sometimes just by myself.
Sure.
My son's was laying in the back of a rowboat with his fishing line in the water, and just laying back, looking up at the sky, and just feeling the gentle rocking of the boat, of the water slapping the sides of the boat, and just a peaceful moment, So we write down what it is, who we're with, by himself, and then what I'm feeling. So mine was, I was just feeling enjoyment, and Michael's was feeling peace. And so, and what happens then, I begin to realize that I can go to that space in my mind, and it has an effect on my feelings.
Physical, emotional, absolutely. Energetic feelings.
Feeling of my energy. Yeah, it gives me a temporary respite from stress. And I can compare that with, for instance, and I can do this. I can notice the things I worry about. and then sort of step outside myself and be aware of my awareness, and be aware of, oh, this is how I feel when I'm worried. This is my worry state.
Yes.
And then I look down at what I wrote and I go, I can feel it. I can feel a little bit of a shift. This is my peaceful state. And now
learning to shift between states.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it makes me understand it. Now that doesn't mean I stop worrying.
Sure. Or you stop being angry.
Or stop being angry.
Sure.
But what it does mean is I will practice going to my quiet place 3 times a day just for a couple moments. I don't have to be there for 5 minutes, not even in 1 whole minute. Just the act of going there is, I can just be, okay, it's around lunchtime. Oh, go to my quiet place. Initially, I have it written down, I look at it. But after a while, I'm reprogramming this thing through repetition.
Yeah.
That I can then get to the point where I just heard that there's a job coming up that I may have to be assigned to that I can't do. Maybe.
Fear.
Yes. Something in the future is going to happen here. And I just go, man, I'm catching myself worrying. Wait a minute. I don't know yet. I can't know yet. Let me see if I can practice my quiet place. So, and so it ties in with, there's also an exercise for patience. And so this workbook is not only about anger and how to deal with it better in the 3 different causes of anger tools, but it's also tools for more life balance, decision making, and patience, which ties into so it's kind of comprehensive. Well, you've seen the book. So
yes,
it's kind of comprehensive.
It's a comprehensive book.
It's not just anger and energy, but how I'm using that energy in my life, and it's the kind of thing that when I complete the workbook with them, 6 sessions with them. By the way, I do that over Skype and over the phone with people.
Sure.
That's why I say I do that out of state with people. And I've got a couple of employers who will send me employees they want to keep, and they'll pay for it. And they'll pay for it, and that's worked out really well for them, because the employer, once again, we've got that impetus or that motivation.
There's a motivation.
It's provided by them. Someone has to push them.
Someone is pushing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pushing you to get into the, because anger again is not popular, even though we said it's a very common emotion, the most common and preferred emotion, but we don't want to talk about it, do we?
Exactly.
So I want to know, is there any more tidbits about anger? Because what I love quotes. I'm a huge fan of quotes, and if anybody's been listening to the Intentional Clinician podcast, they know I'm always going to use some quotes.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing with my guests now is I'm going to move into a section where I read a quote and I'm going to get their gut reaction to it. I love gut reactions and the intuition there. But I want to say, is there anything else before we move to that round that you're dying to get out about anger?
No, just that it's such a big part of our life, and that it's really hard to grasp that learning about it could help me be more empowered. It just doesn't seem to flow. But I just want to mention that it is very important. So we're not getting rid of anger, but we're learning how to use it judiciously. In the same way, we're not getting rid of money, but we're learning how to spend it more wisely.
Right. Thank you, Mike. Very wise words. So now I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
This is going with your gut and intuition. Okay. The first thing that comes to your head. I'm going to start with some easier ones, and then we're going to get to some more interesting ones. But so let's go with an old one. Benjamin Franklin.
Okay.
A couple hundred years ago. He said, "Whatever is begun in anger ends in shame."
Huh.
Mike.
I think my first thought is that shame is associated with anger, in that it's a sin, and you should be ashamed that you're sinning.
Right, and my first thought about it, and I did not prep Mike. He does not know I'm going to read these quotes. Was if we begin something in anger and we're doing something out of anger, we're going to do something that we regret. We're going to take an action that we may not have taken if we had have calmed down. The classic one: a couple has a disagreement about something, and I'm the guy, so I'm just going to take that role and say the guy gets angry, and instead of saying, "Hey, I'm really angry. I need to take 10 minutes and kind of calm down before I can talk about this issue," he yells, hits the wall, slams a cup, slams his keys, and says very mean things about how this person is always hurting him and always on his case, and you're always nagging me or something like that.
Yeah.
This is the classic
explosion.
Right. Yeah. Classic explosion.
Yeah.
And then later on realizing he's really hurt his partner, and realizing that was awful things to say and completely unnecessary. And if he would have calmed down, or if I would have calmed down I could have judiciously or efficiently talk to you about the issue, because the issue wasn't really about me.
Yeah.
It was about something the other person was going through, or it was about a neutral topic, and I took it personally. Yeah. And now I'm feeling shameful because of my behavior, and then I need forgiveness.
This really brings up the conundrum that people have, excuse me, the average person will have, and that is, I'm angry about this, and I don't know what to do about it.
Right.
And I'm feeling shameful about it, and so I'll hold it all in.
The shame turns into?
Yeah, anger.
Anger, and also self-loathing.
Yeah.
Self-hate.
Self-hate. That will build up, and then there'll be a final straw, and I'll act up with a level of 10, where it initially started out as a 2, because I put up with it so long. So this is a challenge. This is a common scenario that happens. But the saying I want to say is, that I think ties into this, is I may have to get angry to identify a problem, but I do not have to stay angry in order to solve it.
Can we repeat that?
Yeah. I may have to get angry to identify a problem, but I don't have to stay angry in order to solve it, unless I don't have anger education tools.
Aha, yes, and that is a nugget of gold. Here's a couple of quotes that go together. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to read both of them because they're both very similar, and I want you to comment. This is by Mark Twain. Mm-hmm. Love Mark Twain. Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything that it is poured on which it is poured. Let me read that again. Anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured.
Yes.
Very poetic. And this one that goes with it, by one of the Buddhas. You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger.
That's what
comments.
Yeah, no, that is true. And that energy, once again, what am I doing with that energy? Am I destroying a relationship with it by Am I doing something I'm going to regret later? Sometimes I can ask people, do you ever do anything? Have you ever done something under the influence of intense anger that you regret?
Right.
And that's a pretty common scenario there. So the anger is energy that's in me, and it will wind up hurting me one way or another if I don't learn how to take it out in some positive way. And the clue of that is I need to, like your story, you need to communicate it out in some way.
Right.
We need to communicate. Now, I can communicate out in different ways. I can talk to a friend and vent.
Sure.
I can vent physically. I can vent creatively.
Creatively.
But if I go vent to the person who made me angry, now I'm confronting. So we see the difference between venting and confronting.
Which confronting can then lead to bad results for both of us.
Exactly. And if I don't do that in the correct way, which I have to learn how to do that better, but it's much harder. But to see those as two separate issues, that just because I'm mad at John doesn't mean I have to hold all that anger in. I can vent. And this is part of what they learn in the training is I have multiple tools for anger usage. But part of what I'm learning early on is to be more aware of my level. So it's very common that I could be a level 10 and I'm so used to it, I don't even notice it.
So we're then walking around irritable, and we have a short trigger for anger.
I just need just one little thing to add to break the camel's back. Just one little thing on there, and you're the one today, and you get it. And all of us have heard that, have felt that before.
We've had somebody in our life, or we've been
absolutely,
that way.
Absolutely. Where
Sure.
we know that that's not the only reason why. The anger you're taking on me is not all about me. And so we know that. Again. Here's what I'm going to think. Then anger's bad, so stop being angry. So we keep coming back to that. So one way or another, I'll either hold it in and it's burning me, the acid's burning me, or I'll throw it out on you and then that winds up burning me down the road.
Sure. So either way we're screwed if we don't learn how to work with anger. And that
it's a no-win situation until I get educated about it. But it's the same with fire. If you showed me fire but didn't show me how it works,
sure,
I'm going to burn myself a lot and probably burn other people. But if you take the time to educate me about it, then I'll be able to use it.
So, and this is bringing me into the point of using anger, and anger for empowerment, personal empowerment, and social change.
Yeah.
Before I get to that, I've got to do this again because it just popped in my head, and if I don't say it, it's going to drive me crazy. Yeah. But I'm going to quote Charles Bukowski out of my memory, so forgive me, everyone who's a fan of his. Who's an odd one to quote if you're quoting about personal self-help. Yeah. But he said something about, in one of his poems, it's not the loss of a job. It's not the fight you lost. It's not the money you lost that drives a man insane and goes into the loony bin. He said, "It's the shoelace that broke when you're tying your shoe.
Mm-hmm.
It's you stubbed your toe. It's not finding a parking spot that finally drives a man over the edge to go totally insane and lose it, I think, with anger." And Charles Bukowski was a notably very angry man who did write a lot to sublimate his anger and to vent, which, of course, a vent, I love the image of a vent being hot air that comes out of a room up through a actual vent. But anyway, comments.
But another that's really good. And another visual, though, is a hot water heater. They always have that overflow tube on it, that pressure relief valve on the top of the tube, because sometimes the thing can get stuck and it's just heating the water continually. Steam builds up inside and it can vent. Without no vent, what's going to happen to the heater? It's going to explode.
It's going to explode.
Exactly. So
many metaphors.
they really are. We need to have them because anger is invisible. Energy is invisible. We see the effects of it, but you can't actually see it.
That's true.
So that energy is a thing. So the thing about the shoelace, once again, I'm sitting on my anger. There's two things about that. Number one, I'm sitting on my anger. I lost the job, but I'm putting up with losing the job.
Right.
Rather than working on getting a new job to replace it. Or in other words, I saw that as a defeat, and maybe it's an unfair defeat.
Sure.
And so I'm going to not do anything about it. And so that's one of the concepts about anger too. It builds in us, and that's why we need the safety valves. And the biggest safety valve is venting.
Venting, and then education. What do I do with this? And now leading, of course, I de-segued myself.
Well, let me go back. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Let me go back. One other thing. He brings up a good point. Violence does not come from anger alone.
Right.
Anger is the energy to act it out. So obviously, if you're going to go to insane asylum, you're going to be using anger. And interestingly enough, the word mad is a synonym for anger and a synonym for insane.
For being crazy.
It's
an older colloquial word.
Yeah.
He's mad. You see it in the old movies.
Yeah, exactly.
But they mean he's actually angry, but he's also insane.
Yes, to the point of insanity. So here's the thing. The other thing that quote of Bukowski came up, which is so important for us to understand and grasp, is that there is no violence without loss. So what did I lose while I was going to do self-violence on me, on myself, on that floor in 19... When was that? 19... It's at the tip. I say it so often. No, it was 1979. 1978. Yeah. Okay. So here I am on the floor, and like I said, I had the anger. I was angry at myself and angry at her for leaving me, and angry. I had all the emotions, but what was the loss that I was experiencing?
A lot of losses.
Yeah.
Loss of her. Yeah. Loss of your identity as a man who's married to a woman. Loss of social prestige, loss of being loss of having a partner to parent your children with, loss of friends who were friends with both of you. I mean, I don't know what else.
The loss of my whole life.
The loss of your whole life.
Okay,
that's how
it felt. I mean, that's
where
how
we're going.
I couldn't put words into that, but that's how it felt. So now, if I don't have my life anymore, I have got nothing to lose. So violence comes from the sense of disempowerment, and hopelessness. That not only have I lost something that can never be replaced, I'm pissed off of how it was done. So it's a combination.
Done to me.
Now, if it was fair, she left because of me. So I took the violence out on me.
Yes.
I was unfair to me.
Yes.
So again, I think it's so important that we see, when we see the violence, we see the anger part. That's all we see. But there's always the loss. And the loss has to be so great that I have nothing to lose.
So why not act out on the anger?
Exactly. So that's what these...
Why not get even?
That's why these bombers, that's why we can't stop these bombers, because who knows what their story is. Their dad was killed in front of them.
Sure.
Or their whole family was assassinated by who knows what their story. But there'll be tremendous, or it could be their adolescence and they have no hope for a future.
Terrible degradation.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's some loss.
They're indoctrinated as a teenager. They have nothing to lose. They're away from their family. They have no prospects, no education, no economy. And all they know is there's an enemy out there.
And that's why societies who are so unfair that the wealth of the nation goes to the top and there's none left for the bottom, at a certain point, that loss coupled with the anger and frustration of the unfairness of it, generates the violence for overthrow.
Yes, and that is really interesting that you're bringing that up, because that actually is now a perfect segue into using anger for not only self-empowerment, which we've been talking about through education, but anger for social change.
Yes.
And we're not taking sides here, but we're trying to be objective as counselors. But there's a couple quotes I want to read here, and I think they're related.
Okay.
Well, I guess maybe they're not totally related, but there is probably going to... Oh, here we go. Anger is a Gift. Your Anger is a Gift by Zach De La Rocha, who is famously from the band Rage Against the Machine and also Prophets of Rage. So he sees anger as a gift, and I think what you're talking about is anger gets you motivated.
Yes.
But if you're using it in the right way, you can create some sort of personal change within you if you're using it in the right way, and also possible social change. So if you're angry about something in society or you're angry about something at your job, speak up about it. And he did through his songs. Yep. Go ahead.
No, that's what you're saying is true. And once again, it isn't just that it's a gift for me. It's a gift that empowers me. Yeah, anger is empowerment because it doesn't just give me that energy to transform, the transformation comes from my actions that I'm going to take. But it can give me, it can encourage me, it can give me courage, and it can overcome fears that would stop me from moving forward. So now I'm getting into the positive uses. So we use the broad word empowerment, but the two major positives of anger is, number one, it identifies a problem that I need to see. I may not have been seeing it before.
Right.
Number two, it gives me the energy to overcome, to solve the problem and overcome the fear I may have of even trying to overcome the problem.
Right.
So that's the empowerment. It's much broader than just transformation. And then in the act of me doing that, that's what transforms me.
And so let's go with that. I'm going to read two quotes.
Okay.
Very diverse groups here. So this is by James Russell Lowell, who I believe is a philosopher of some type. Usually when people are sad, they don't do anything. They just cry over their condition. But when they get angry, they bring about a change. That's
exactly what we were just talking about. Now, hopefully that change isn't violent, but you can see where that fits in.
So here's an interesting one. You were talking about anger as sin, and I'm going to talk about Martin Luther, who did the Protestant Reformation.
Oh yeah.
For a moment, because culturally, people see it as a sin if they've come from that Judeo-Christian tradition. But because I found the quote in Ephesians, and Paul wrote, "Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger." So actually, I think there's a bunch of other verses probably, but I like that one because he said, "Be angry but do not sin."
That's in my book because that's the only biblical quote, because it's not a Christian book.
Sure.
But that quote is very powerful because I was raised, and I think a lot of people were raised, that anger is a sin.
Right.
Back to that 7 deadly sins thing. And by the way, that was written 1,800 years ago. So that's been in our psyche for 1,800 years.
Right.
That writing about the 7 deadly sins. So that is one of the quotes early on in the very first chapter of the Healthy Expressions of Anger.
And so he's saying, be angry, but don't sin, meaning don't act out in a bad way, but also don't let the sun go down on it. So if you've got problems with somebody, go and work it out.
Tell them right now. Tell them before you go to sleep.
And so I like that one. And now I started with Martin Luther, but then I went to Apostle. But Martin Luther, who brought about the Protestant Reformation because he was angry at the Catholic Church and the abuses going on, and stapled the 99 something on their door. I can't remember what it was called, but and he said this: "I never work better than when I am inspired by anger. I never work better than when I am inspired by anger. For when I am angry, I can write, pray, and preach well. For then my whole temperament is quickened, my understanding sharpened, and all mundane vexations and temptations depart."
Two things. Number one, I feel the energy. And number two, it allows me to overcome my vexations, my fears, my concerns, my worries. How many people do not take action because of their fear? Anger trumps fear.
Yes. And that can empower us to do change.
But it can also empower me to do bad things too.
Oh, well, yes. We're going on the positive. But yes, it can also cause lots of problems. Now, Aristotle said this: "Anybody can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person and to the right degree and at the right time and for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy."
you can see then, and again, that quote is in the very front page of my book.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. But you can see why that one's there, because look how much I have to learn, and I learned nothing about it.
Yes.
So suppose I raised you and didn't teach you about how to potty train you.
Right.
When you were young.
That would be a problem.
Yeah, you'd still go because it's natural, but you'd hide it, you'd feel embarrassed about it, and that's exactly what we do with anger.
Absolutely. So, and that is ending my quote round of the anger discussion. I think I've learned a lot about it from you over the years of working on our project, which of course, if anyone's out there who still wants to fund our project, to put 15 videos of 8 minutes long with anecdotes in jails and prisons all across America to help the population learn how to use their anger when they get out. Feel free to give us a call.
Absolutely.
But in the meantime, Mike's book is available, Healthy Expressions of Anger, from speakmancoaching.com. I'm sure it will be by the time this podcast is released. I've learned a lot because, this is about life. And we're dealing with life, and we're dealing with mental health. And this is a big part of mental health that is not that popular, like we talked about. Everyone talks about depression and bipolar and anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder, which are very important, and I will be discussing those in other podcasts, but I haven't been seeing a lot about anger in the magazines and in the blogs lately. So I think it's an important part because it is encompassing of our human experience. Mm-hmm. And part of what I know you do and I do, we try to do in our work, is not just talk about things in terms of mental health and sort of this clinical approach. Now, we are very clinical, and we follow the guidelines of the state and all that business, and we read all the books, but also having this, combining combining the medical experience with the human experience and that human narrative that every person inside, if they're given the right tools or given that space and given that nourishment, can change and can transform and really, the human mind is an amazing organ, and it can actually transform in brain scans through different, if it's given the right help. But then bringing that right back from the science to the person, our human story. What do we want our story to be? And knowing that people have used anger both for destructive, terrible things and wars and reactions and greed and control, but also seeing that people have used anger to Rosa Parks. Mm-hmm. She used her anger appropriately on the bus to start the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. Used his anger to preach and to march in the streets and to bring about more of the civil rights movement. I'm sure there's countless other examples from history. As I said, musicians using their anger to make music and to help people get in touch with their anger in a way that's non-destructive. And of course, I remember once I was angry at a job. Uh-huh. I was angry. I worked, I won't name where, but I worked somewhere for a while, and I was so angry with the policies, and I felt that the employees were not being treated properly. Mm-hmm. I felt that we were not being compensated appropriately. I felt we were being condescended to, and I wasn't the only one. Yeah. But I was the only one that spoke up. And one of the only ones who spoke up publicly in meetings and in emails and in surveys, because I didn't like the attitude of the administration. And everyone said, "Don't do it. Don't speak up. We'll go, vent about it at happy hour. Come to happy hour. We'll talk about it. Don't risk your job." And I said, I cannot work here. If they're going to fire me for speaking up about this, then so be it. I can get another job. And I was terrified. I don't have much money in the bank. I was. This is back when I was making nothing. Yep. But I said, doggone it, I'm going to say this. And so I said it, and I said it loud, and I said it at the meeting several times in our group meeting. I said it over email, and I filled out the employee survey, and I said, by the way, this is an anonymous survey, but this is Paul Krause saying this, and I'm going to say this until something changes. Yeah. And I was very pleasantly surprised that they apologized to the staff. Mm-hmm. They had a big meeting, apologized in emails, and said, we're going to make this right. We did get compensated more. Mm-hmm. They also worked on a program for loan forgiveness because of that. And also, it was a good thing. It was funny, though, in my annual review, I had top scores on everything: clinical, helping people, working well with team members, doing my training job. But here's the funny part. My negative review was on, what was it? Something about...
not being a team player? Or
no,
something?
I was a team player
okay.
with my... I got voted that. I got voted Employee of the Month for being a team player. But it was something about not respecting the chain of command.
Chain of command.
I was not respecting the chain of command.
Like this is the Army.
Or my direct supervisor, because when they wouldn't listen to me, I went over their head.
Yeah.
And they did not like that, but I had no choice because I had vented enough to them, and I had been shot down saying it was all in my head, and that I needed to work on myself. And I said I did work on myself. I'm not writing you an all caps email that you sent to me. I'm writing you a nice email. So
this sounds like
Go
ahead.
I
was going to say this sounds like an agency and not a business.
It might have been an agency.
Yeah,
I can't. I don't know if I can say that.
Well, no one knows what that agency is, but
no one knows unless they read my bio.
But I'm just saying, in business, they would have promoted you.
Oh, okay. So apparently, being in mental health field, you don't get promoted.
Again, there's this big split between businesses and agencies
healthcare,
too.
Right.
Healthcare agencies, and there's that. And I recently re-upped my license. I had to, every 2 years you have to.
Yep, every 2 years you got to turn the paperwork, do the continuing education, make sure your shoes are tied, and you didn't get any criminal charges.
And I carried it up there, hand carried it, and left the check, cashier's check of $475. She called me back, Mike, it's only $450. You gave us $475. I said, well, just keep the difference. No, we can't do that. Well, donate it. No, we can't do that. So I had to go get that cashier's check and bring him a new cashier's check.
Which cost you how much?
It was only $450 instead of $475. I mean,
right? No, but it cost you money to do that.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, driving and time and all that other stuff. But if that was a business, they could have handled it. See, so there's constraints on agencies. There's constraints on governments.
Right.
And so if we get a business person involved with government, then they could bring that part of it.
As long as they've got the empathy, I'm cool with that, Mike.
Yeah. I squeezed it in, didn't I?
As long as they remember what it's like to be poor.
I squeezed it in, didn't I?
Yeah. So anyway, so we're basically at the end here. It sounds like we've done a two-parter. I'm going to edit it. The second part was about anger. The first part was about emotional development, transformation, substance abuse, rites of passage, our culture.
These are life things.
Life lessons.
These are life things. And what you were talking about is the difference between the the past and the future and that kind of stuff. Well, the counseling, the human part versus just the clinical part.
Right.
To me, this is counseling. This is life coaching.
Right. Okay.
And it's getting closer and closer together.
Right.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's getting closer.
Right.
These people will be scared to death.
Well, it's about how you do it.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that we do in counseling, and that you do, is in counseling, we are not telling anybody what to do.
Yeah.
The only time we tell anybody what to do is if they tell us they're going to kill themselves or kill someone else, and then we have to make that judgment,
issue,
and we will take over. But other than that, we are there to use all our knowledge and use our skills, but what I think we're there for is subtraction. So what I mean by subtraction is the person has the answer inside, unless they really have had a really hard time in their life and if they've been abused and all this sort of thing, then they might not have the answer, but they have the intuition to know there is an answer.
Yes.
And we can provide that education. And so, but in counseling, we're really trying to step back, develop that relationship so that person can take their story and they can take what they know inside, deep inside. Maybe they don't even know what the words are, but they know how they feel, and they can learn to bring about change in their life and in their relationships and in their habits and in their career and their vocation and in their story, and then eventually, of course, in their mood, because when we practice these behaviors, then our mood changes, and our mood is a result of those behaviors. And sometimes our mood can cause other behaviors, but you can learn to listen to your mood, and you can learn to listen to your emotions, and you can learn to deal with them in a positive way. And then, of course, the education piece. A lot of times in counseling, we'll flip into that life coach mode for a moment, but I call it just education. So I'm going to tell you everything I know as a client of mine. I'm going to teach you what I know because I don't know what you're going to do with that information. I know what I did with it.
You can pick and choose.
But you could. This is what I've read in the books, and it's up to you to do what you want to do with it. I'm never going to tell you what to do because we want to empower people.
Yeah.
And so And so you were joking about the life coaching and the counseling coming together. And what I think you meant by the life coaching, and let me know if I'm wrong, some life coaches are a bit prescriptive. Mm-hmm. They say, "Oh, well, give me your schedule. Do it like this." Mm-hmm. And "Oh, why aren't you meditating 10 minutes a day?"
You're right.
Well,
You're right.
If somebody's going to meditate 10 minutes a day, of course, all the research says that that's going to help you. But I tell the people, "Hey, the research says this, but it's up to you, whatever you want to do." But so what did you mean by that?
No, you're right about that. So this is one of those examples where we have two opposites coming together.
Right.
Because in the counseling thing, it's a lot about the past.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's a lot about the past.
To understand ourselves.
Yeah.
To understand our story.
And you got trauma. You got and if you come into treatment and you come in and you're really hurting, you better be empathetic and listen to their past story and kind of stuff. Coaching is, what are you going to do now? Coaching is what is your, so I think we're all a combination of coaching and counseling skills.
Absolutely.
So there's no real total black and white there. But to me, just for simplicity's sake, I look at coaching as more of this, how can I apply this? So for instance, the workbook, the anger workbook that you like, Healthy Expressions of Anger, just like SMARTS training, is a coaching model.
That's true.
Workbook.
It isn't about the past as much as it's about, here's some skills, what are we going to do?
Exactly.
And I call that psychoeducation in counseling.
We call that. But to me, that's what the coaching saying, okay, I hear what your problems is. Okay, I see the problem. Now let's talk about the solution.
Sure.
Now, to me, clinical is a medical model. And the medical model is based on a problem.
Sure.
First, do no harm. Well, now I have to think of all the things that could be harmful.
Right. Right.
I'm distracted by that.
Right.
So from the get-go, it's problematic. But our culture is problematic from the get-go in this way.
Sure.
It is the reaction. It is designed as a reaction to a threat.
Yes.
So therefore, it's all based on fear. So whether we like it or not, we have a fear-based society.
Right.
It's whether we like it or not. And so transformation is me transforming myself from a fear-based
mindset
right, to a faith-based mindset.
Right.
And not the faith in me, but the faith in something outside of me, God, this doorknob, my sponsor,
the universe,
something outside of me, the universe. And so that's how so that's what I'm saying is, when I discovered life coaching, which was maybe 7 or 8 or 9 years ago,
sure,
and I started learning about it, I went, shit, I already am one.
Right.
I didn't know I was one.
Well, and that's
funny.
I
took courses in it. I mean, because I wanted to learn.
It's funny, in my counseling profile at one point, I actually had life coaching because people see that as a whole other set of skills. Yeah. I just saw it as solution-focused counseling or psychoeducation, which are big words. So so it is life coaching, but the person has got to come to me for that and want that, and I will provide that, as you will provide that as well, doing your education, because I think a lot of life coaching is education and then saying, here's what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Here's the information. Here's what the experts say. What do you want to do with it? And also, problem solving and goal setting and learning how to follow through and make a small goal every week instead of a giant goal.
Yeah, and those, by the way, are life skills for adults. Those are adult coping skills as well. So anyway,
bringing it all together.
Yeah, I think
the adults coping
I brought
skills.
these things for you.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about them and then we'll close out.
This one, I saw that on.
Oh, guidelines for practical life skills.
I thought that was an interesting list.
Yes.
Just someone's idea of a list.
So I'd have to kind of read this out loud. I wonder, where can people find this?
It's on her website.
30handmadedays.com. So 2 to 3 years, help put toys away, put clothes in a laundry basket. So this is a lot of child development, which I really encourage our listeners to read about child development if you have a child.
Yeah.
And then, of course, 16 to 18-year-old learning all these sort of skills, getting into more abstract thinking.
Yeah.
So
and I brought those for you just to have it.
So I appreciate that. So Mike, I just want to say Mike Speakman has been my guest and the Intentional Clinician for a 2-part episode, epic episode, all recorded in one day. You did a great job. People can get a hold of Mike by going to speakmancoaching.com. Is there a work phone number in case people are sick of the internet?
602-284-1411.
Okay, and they can request all sorts of things. They can request the life coaching for parents of addicted loved ones. They can request anger management. They can request healthy expressions of anger.
Yeah.
They can request what else can they request? They can request parenting workshops. What else?
I just happen to know a lot of resources around for for families and for addicts and alcoholics in the Arizona area.
Sure.
But also some out of state.
That's true. You're connected to 19 states with PAL.
Yeah.
Oh, and they can find out about Parents of Addicted Loved One groups at palgroup.org.
Yeah. But I can be a good starting place for people to, where do I go from here? What are some options and choices? I do a lot of referring.
Sure, you do a lot of referring. I know you do the coaching, and you also are a licensed substance abuse counselor.
Yeah.
So if somebody is in Arizona, they could come to you for actual clinical work on that issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, they could. I don't do very much of that anymore.
Sure, you're kind of scaling up, and you're doing some workshops. I know. Who knows what'll be happening when this podcast airs? But I know that you're also working on intensives for parents, and that they in the Phoenix area, and eventually maybe having parents fly in from out of state. Is that true?
Yes, that's a parent intensive weekend training, which would be a format: a Friday evening, all day Saturday, and half a day Sunday, and that will be. It's designed for parents who it's been kind of a long journey for them and their loved ones, and it's intended to help them wind up with a very practical plan and a roadmap they can then follow that can hopefully be helpful for them. And it's intended to be kind of a breakthrough weekend.
Yes.
Because typically parents will have, it's a longer journey to get their son or daughter long-term recovery help.
Right.
There maybe be multiple treatment events, multiple long-time years, and just very skilled children at avoiding long-term recovery.
Sure, and I think it would be great for the parents to have an intensive weekend with you and or through the group workshop, because that is saving them thousands of dollars. You might say, oh, flying here and paying some money to Mike, that's so much money. Well, think about how many years of counseling you may have to go through, and Mike has the experience, years of experience, and knows how to, give you the tools you need in a pretty quick way. So I'm excited about that coming up for you.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So thanks, Mike. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming in. And we want to thank all our listeners for listening to the Intentional Clinician podcast. And we'll see you next time on the show. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I enjoyed doing it. Mike Speakman is a fantastic person, and if you ever get a chance to read one of his books, I really recommend it. You heard his contact information there at the end. And he's quite findable on the internet. I just wanted to thank everybody who's been tuning in every week. Feel free to shoot me an email if you want to have a topic discussed or ask me a question that I can answer in a future podcast. I plan to continue to release these as much as I can. I have several more interviews, and I'm going to record some more interviews, and I'm also going to do some more monologues as well. And if you are in the Michigan area, I can work with you either in Grand Rapids itself or through telecounseling, as I am allowed to do that in this state. I'm also licensed in Arizona as well, and I'm there a few times a year, although I don't really take new clients there. I am doing some consulting work in Arizona for some behavioral health agencies. All right, thanks again for supporting this podcast. I really appreciate it. I hope that you're learning things and it's speaking to you in some way that will make you go out and live your life the way you want to do it and have some more inspiration. I know podcasts are always very inspirational for me. All right, have a great week. The recording you just listened to consists of the personal opinions of Paul Krauss, and while these are based upon the literature he has read and his experience in the field, they should not be viewed as the definitive opinion on the subject. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for treatment. If you are in need of counseling, don't hesitate to make an appointment with a local counselor in your area. You, of course, can also make an appointment with Paul or one of his associates by emailing or calling Paul. The information is on healthforlifegr.com or paulkrauscounseling.com. If you are in crisis, please call 911 immediately or the National Suicide Prevention Line, 1-800-273-8255. All right, hope everyone has a good week.